Good afternoon, my name is Sha-Tiah, and today I will be discussing the bubonic plague and the similarities that it has with COVID, but not too much discussion on COVID. I will also discuss the underlying political, economic, and environmental structures that paved the way for the disease, where it emerged from, and also is our capitalist way of life biological sustainable. So here's some background on bubonic plague. The bubonic plague started out in China. It emerged when Asian steppe borderlands dried up, and the rodents who lived in the area at that time, they came out of their burrows or wherever they lived in, and they came in contact with the pastoral peoples. Once they came in contact with the pastoral peoples, they spread it to other humans, and the bubonic plague it started off from a bacteria that lived on the rodents, and once the fleas bit the rodents, the fleas jumped on the people, and it also spread that way. And in that time, people lived with rodents, kind of in close spaces, and it was kind of pretty filthy at that time, so it was probably pretty common for people to be disease stricken. So the disease can actually be you can get the disease two ways: through the fleas and also through droplets in the air. So when a person coughs, a droplet like a blood would probably splatter in somebody's face, and now they have the disease, and a person could either die the same day or it would take weeks for that person to die. So how did it get all over Eurasia and all the other countries? Well, simple: trade. At the time, the Mongolians tried to capture Kaffa, and when they tried to capture Kaffa, they really wasn't winning. And when they came in contact with the soldiers in Kaffa, they spread the disease in that way. It's hearsay that some of the soldiers were catapulting the dead bodies, dead corpses who were diseased, over the wall of Kaffa, and basically kind of saying that was the first form of biological warfare. And this happened in 1346. When this happened, a lot of the towns and rulers and empires at that time turned to religion. In India, Iran, and Turkey, new rulers turned to Islam. In Sicily, they turned to the church. And in Germany, they actually kind of ran away from the church. We had the flagellants who came about and decided that, through suffering, that they would gain God's trust again, and the plague would somehow go away. What I would like to say to that is that, one of the political ways how things got that way is that, most of the rulers at that time, they didn't really care about what was going on as long as it made their estate money. Like the Pope of Avignon, he decided to ignore, his name is G.D. Chaliac. I don't know if I pronounced that right. G.D. Chaliac's advice. And he said, hey, God will take care of this. I won't be being sick. I won't get sick. And when he did that, a lot of people who were under his rule at the time, they began getting sick. And he didn't protect his people. He stayed in his office. He made sure he didn't get sick. And it was too late. And it kind of the same thing happened with COVID-19 all over. All of the elites, they stayed hidden, while more than likely the essential workers who were more than lower class, who had to work, they came in contact with the disease. But back to the bubonic plague, the lower class citizens, they also got the disease as well, because they couldn't afford to go to their estate in the countryside like the noblemen. They had to work, and they also lived in filth. They lived in filth, and they lived basically on top of each other as well. And I don't think that our capitalist way of life is biological sustainable, because if you can't put the people first, then there's no way that we can live under those conditions. A lot of people died. during the bubonic plague. I believe it was 1/3 to 2/3 of the population died in Europe at that time. And I believe 158,000 cases died during this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think I basically covered it all.